If you're a lineman in charge of keeping the lights on, Grainger understands that you go to great lengths, and sometimes heights, to ensure the power is always flowing. Which is why you can count on Grainger for professional-grade products and next-day delivery, so you have everything you need to get the job done. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Blog Talk Radio.
The following broadcast is brought to you by the iGolf Sports Network.
Golf Talk Live is sponsored by the iGolf Sports Network and Golf Tips Magazine. Here's Andrew to tell you more about our sponsors.
iGolf Sports is a live stream broadcast and media production company providing quality programming designed to attract the golfing enthusiast. And Golf Tips, the game's most in-depth instruction magazine, including reviews on the latest equipment, tips from top teaching professionals, all designed to help you improve from tee to green. Welcome to Golf Talk Live with your host, Ted Odorico. Join Ted each week as he speaks with some of the best in golf. This week's special guest will join us a bit later. But first up is another great discussion on Coach's Corner. So let's introduce tonight's Coach's Corner panel.
All right, good evening, everybody, and once again, welcome to Golf Talk Live. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and we've got a great show for you tonight. We're going to be starting things off here, as we always do, with a great discussion here on the Coach's Corner panel. And then a little bit later on, I'm going to be joined by my very special guest, the founder of GolfForever, Dr. Jeremy James. He'll be joining me in about an hour's time, so I'm looking forward to having a great discussion with him. And here we are, the 2nd of June. It's hard to believe we're already rocking and rolling into the first month of summer. It's not officially summer yet, but we're getting pretty close, and the weather certainly is telling us otherwise. But anyways, we've got a great show. Thanks for tuning in, and for those of you that are listening live right now, obviously you found me, and you can also go and listen to the recorded version if there's any time that there's a program that you really enjoy that you want to maybe hear parts of it again. Just go to blogtalkradio.com/Golf Talk Live and just scroll down to the on-demand section, and you can pick out any show, including tonight's, and listen to it its entirety with the recorded version. So you can always do that whenever it's convenient for you. So, again, thanks for tuning in live. And I'm going to introduce the Coach's Corner panel, and we're going to get into tonight's discussion. I think it's going to be a good one. First up, of course, is James Kyle. He's a PGA professional and coach at the East Woodlands Lake Country Club. 30 years ago, he began his journey as a professional golfer and coach. The incredible experiences James has had while improving his own swing, fitness, training, traveling, and competing on mini tours and 2 PGA Tour qualifying schools elevated his ability to provide incredible lessons for his clients. Also on the panel is Pete Buchanan. He's been teaching golf for 30-plus years. He's the founder and director of instruction of Plain Simple Golf LLC, which, of course, houses the Plain Simple Golf Circuit and the Simple Swing Repeater Training Brace. And he's been helping golfers focus on building a repeatable swing. So, guys, Pete and James, welcome to Coach's Corner here on Golf Talk Live.
Thank you, Ted. Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Ted. Good to be here.
All right, appreciate it. And as always, thank you for giving of your time. I know it's not always easy. I've noticed a couple times this year we've had a few that either weren't able to make it or were a little bit late to the dance floor, as they say. But no hard feelings. Obviously, I know it's difficult sometimes getting home from the course and from teaching lessons. So I really appreciate everybody for taking time and spending it here with the audience. All right, we're going to talk about really becoming a good golf player, and this is different from just being a weekend warrior, just out kind of having fun with your buds and whatnot. There's a lot of people that really want to be a better player. We're going to talk about that. And I think one of the things, and I'm going to start with James tonight. I think I'm going to start with you, James, and then Pete, I'll bring you in on the conversation as well. So the question really is, so you want to become a player. And what I mean by that is you don't want to be just somebody out there that's hitting golf balls and sort of mealing your way around the golf course. You want to be a better player. You want to really, dig in and score better. And shoot some low numbers. And there's a number of things we're going to talk about tonight that really are going to help you do that. But I think first and foremost, and I want to get your thoughts on this, James, your game needs to be built around ball striking. You've got to be a good ball striker, and that doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have tremendous length, but you definitely need to be hitting the ball well enough that you're going to hit a lot of greens in regulation during your rounds. And otherwise, if you happen to miss them, then you better be getting up and down for par most of the time as well. What are your thoughts here? Do you agree with this, that really, and again, I'm not saying you have to be the best in the world, but you've got to be a good, consistent ball striker, and you've got to be accurate to be a better quality player. What are your thoughts, James?
Yeah, so for sure, you know, the golfers that I see day in and day out, you know, I see that players are missing a standard routine, you know, a pre-shot routine. And, you know, they're out on the golf course, and they really they haven't learned to kind of see what they need to do from the tee shot all the way to the green. And, you know, whether the hole is straight away, whether it has water, they really, you know, in order to score better, you got to have some kind of a strategy. And the strategy is really shot to shot. You know, it's not the whole golf course, right? You have to have some kind of a strategy and a plan. Not every hole needs a driver off the tee. You know, where are your strengths off the tee box, and where are your strengths? You know, which iron do you hit the best to the green? Is there one iron that you're the most accurate with? And is that iron, you know, a pitching wedge? Is it a 7 iron? And when you're teeing off, you know, to have a better score, you know, obviously we need no penalties. But for me, players need a routine, and it needs to be as consistent as possible all the way to rolling the ball with the putter. Something that's the same amount of time. You know, if you take 10 seconds to line up your shot, you know, it should be taking you 10 seconds all the time. And for me, you know, that's kind of where, from a scoring point of view, I'm always watching my players and trying to develop a routine that is consistent. Even their pace of play, you know, how quickly they walk to the ball, you know, so you're trying to maintain your heart rate's not getting up too high because you're trying to go too fast. Those are the kind of things I start with my players.
Yeah, and you're right. You want to have sort of a cadence to your walk. You don't want to be rushing 1 minute, and the next minute you're kind of slowing down and jumping back and forth. And I think of 2 examples. You know, you're either a player like a Nick Price, who you know, is a quicker paced player, and that works for him, or you're maybe somebody like a Freddie Couples or an Ernie Els that's a little bit slower, more methodical, particularly Ernie Els. But you can't mix the two. You're either one or the other, or somewhere in between. So you're exactly right. You've got to develop a routine. Pete, I want to get you on here. You know, skills are one thing, and you're certainly welcome to add to what James was talking about. My first point was really about being a good ball striker and so forth. But as I said, skills are one thing, belief is another. And it should go without saying that you need to be very skilled in all parts of the game to become a good player. But I think there's one main difference that you'll notice, and that is players have a deep belief in their abilities. In other words, they've gotten to a layer, and I'm talking about good players. Now, I'm not talking just regular average players. I'm talking about really good players, and not necessarily tour players, but just good players out there in general. They have a deep belief in their abilities. Go ahead, and if you want to add some thoughts on my original point, and then about being and being confident in your abilities. Go ahead.
Well, I think it boils down to, you know, a lot about what James said about having a routine, but also you've got to practice to get control over that golf ball. You know, really, really good players are really confident because they can control the ball very well. And if you can't control the ball, then it's hard to have confidence in what you're doing if you don't really understand where it's going to go. So when you actually look at how really good players actually practice, it's completely different than the masses practice. I mean, I spent some time just a couple weeks ago with one of the PGA Tour players, and the second day I was with him working on his game, he took me through his complete practice routine. And the amount of detail and time and precision and setup and everything that went into that little practice routine, I don't see any of my amateurs doing that. And so,
right.
It's really about the precision practice, getting control over the golf ball, being able to hit shots when you need to hit them. And I think that then goes into what you're talking about with the confidence that they have out there. Yeah, they're very confident because they know they can hit those shots. And, you don't see, tournament players especially hitting shots on the course that they haven't practiced. And they're not going to do that. There's too much at stake with those guys. If they get into a situation where they have to get out, they just get out if they haven't practiced some kind of shot. But, they practice a lot of different situations, even from just, hitting some simple pitch shots where you have, 30 yards and you've got a 56-degree wedge and you're going to hit 3 balls and you're going to give yourself, a total of 10 feet away from the hole for all 3. I don't see any of my amateurs practicing like that. They're just hitting ball after ball and trying to run them up towards the hole. There's a little bit of consequence with every area that you're practicing in to put a little pressure just to make you a little bit better. But, to me, I've always been a ball control guy. And so my first thing is, let's get control over the golf ball first. Let's get you some confidence in where you're hitting it. Now let's go out on the golf course and show you how to take those abilities and dissect the holes like James was talking about to say, hey, you don't need to hit driver on this hole. It doesn't do you any good. So let's look at the holes individually and how they're set up, and let's get you to play this hole to the best of your ability based on the ability you actually have. So I think that's the way I always look at it.
Yeah, well said. And James, we know as golf professionals, we know that this game is difficult. Doesn't matter what level you are, it's difficult. Even for the best of the best, there's challenges that you're going to make. Probably many mistakes during your round, hopefully not too many. But I think the difference between a really good player and sort of the rest of the pack is that they know how to recover from these mistakes. So, again, it's very rare to see a golfer at a higher level make 2 disastrous mistakes in a row. They might make one, maybe they hit it into the water, or maybe they've hit it out of bounds. They're not likely to repeat that. So I think I would like for you to maybe talk a little bit about that, because there's really a mindset that comes into play here when somebody's going down that path where they're making mistakes. Give me a sort of an overview of a less skilled player and a better skilled player. What are they doing differently from one another?
Yeah, that's a great question. So myself as a player, all the times that I've ever hit a poor shot and ended up, in the water, out of bounds, or what have you, the first thing I'm saying to myself is, I can still make birdie. So, if it's a par 4 and I have hit a hook or something, I'm in the water, I'm taking a drop, I'm 133 yards to clear the bunker with another 7 yards to the flag. In my mind, I'm saying I can still save par, even though I went in the water. I just have to hit a great shot. One putt. In my mind, that's exactly what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that already leaving the tee box and as a player. And I would say, the average player, when they've hit that shot in there, the entire time, as soon as they've hit it, they're already saying, well, what's wrong with my swing? Well, how did that? I must have come over the top. I must have done this or that. And so they never really have the mindset of, well, I'm in the water. I can still make par. And so I see that a lot, where they haven't learned to already be thinking about the near future that, I can still hit a pitching wedge up on the green and make par. This is no big deal. But so many times, they're stuck in that moment of negative that they just experienced. And then, that typically carries over it to the next hole, maybe even the next hole after that, because now all they're doing is thinking about their golf swing, which has, the score is out of the picture.
Right. Well, and what they're doing now is they're transitioning from a player to somebody that's becoming very analytical. Now they're not thinking about, okay, what do I need to do to score better on this next hole? They're thinking about swing mechanics. They're thinking about, well, I didn't hit a good shot off the tee, so my tee shot wasn't that great on hole number 13, so I'm here. I've got another chance at hole number 14. Instead of thinking about the shot, what I've got to do, they're thinking about mechanics. Well, what did I do wrong? So now they're breaking down their swing as opposed to focusing on continuing and playing. Now, those are things they can work on later on when they get off the course and maybe they want to go on and evaluate some of the mistakes they've made on the golf course. But what most amateur golfers doing is they're now breaking that down on the golf course. So, Pete, here's what I want to ask you is, how do you get to this level? So one of the things that we're going to talk about real quick is people probably wonder, how do I get to that level? And it's not something that it can be taught or learned overnight. It's a belief that has to be sort of earned over time. And I'm talking about, obviously, the ability to, to be able to build that confidence. So there's a couple of things that really you need to do to be a better player in order to get to this level. And that is, number one, you have to practice effectively. You've got to play a lot. You've got to be willing to fail. But more importantly, you learn from those mistakes, adjust, all at the same time staying positive. Let's see if you can wrap those points together and help some of our golfers listening. That's for Pete, sorry.
Yeah, that's a good wrap there. I like that. You sort of wrapped it up a lot. No, and you're absolutely right. You got to be positive in what you're doing, but also too, I mean, to me, to really get to a really, really low level, you've got to understand your game inside and out. You've got to understand your abilities, what you can do, what you can't do. You have to understand where your strengths are. You need to build on your weaknesses. You have to play to your strengths when you're on the golf course. And in certain times you avoid your weaknesses. For example, if you're struggling with, 30, 40, 50-yard pitch shots and your second shot in the par 5 is going to leave you, 40 yards away, then don't hit it there. Hit it to where you're 100 yards away. So you have now you're playing to a strength of a club that you're better at. Or what are your best clubs into the green? Drive it off the tee so you're hitting your best shots into the green. So if you can understand your game to its fullest and understand where you are, where you're at your best, I think that's going to create so much more positive attitude when you're out on the golf course and sort of push the negative out of the way. But I still think, I'm always going to boil down to, I'll give a lot of my players that really want to get to a low level, I'll give them a 6-iron, and I'll put 2 sticks out in front of them about 10 yards, and I'll put the sticks a foot apart, and I said, all right, I want you to hit balls between those 2 sticks. And I only want them to go about 40 yards, but I want you to be able to hit them between there. And they always look at me like, what's this for? I said, you got to be able to control the ball. I mean, if you can't control it with a 6-iron at 40 yards, then, what are we going to do with the rest of it? So we've got to learn how to control the face, where the face is. Every tournament player knows where that club face is, and they know how to control it. Whether they understand the dynamics and the the biomechanics and all that stuff, what have you, they know how to control the golf ball. That's why they're out there. So we've got to give them those same opportunities. I'm sure you did it, Ted. I'm sure, James, you did it when you were younger. You're down on the range as a kid, and, there's some targets out there. You're going to hit 1,000 balls until you hit the target. I mean, it's kind of fun to hit the target. We used to have these big ball markers that were like big, giant balls on the tee. And we'd start off with a 9-iron. We'd go till we hit it with a 9, then an 8, then a 7, then a 6. So we're learning ball control, at an early age. And it all boils down to what you're talking about, practice. You got to be out there. You got to be out there, hit the shots, practice the shots, do the right things in your practice that are going to make you better. And that, I think, is going to help you overall into what you were talking about by, being more positive, practicing the right way, and getting the best out of your game when you're out there. I think that's kind of the way that I would go about the whole thing.
Yeah, well said. And James, I want to just read something real quick, and then I've got a question for you. According to the USGA, less than 2% of golfers have a handicap of 0 or lower. And obviously the main reason is it's a difficult game, as I mentioned earlier, and it takes a great deal of time to be able to accomplish a goal of getting your handicap down that low. And for most folks out there that we're going to deal with on a day-to-day basis, it's a pretty lofty goal. But it's okay. And some might make an argument and say, well, the higher handicappers players maybe enjoy the game more, and maybe they do because they're not as diligently focusing as hard as needed in order to become a bit better player. But even the high handicappers can become better players. Now, they may not be a 0 handicap or what have you, but they can still become a good player and work their way down. And you talked earlier about having a good routine and having a consistent routine out in the golf course. But I think it also is a routine of practice, as Pete touched about. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what the higher handicap golfers can do in preparation before they even get to the round that is going to give them the best chance possible to play well out there. What do they need to do? I mean, it's not just a matter of raking golf balls and hitting them. Put me together a plan. If you had a 20 handicap standing in front of you, what are you going to say to them to say, I want you to go out and play your best this afternoon when you go out and tee it up. Here's what I want you to work on for the next hour.
So that warm-up routine is going to be 45 minutes of short game. And if they had the means to do it, they would probably 15 minutes of putting, with the majority of the putts at the beginning would be long putts, 30 to, say, 45 feet, and getting those lag putts very close to the hole. Then, 5-10 minutes of 3 to 6 footers, which is just about what everyone has on that next putt, or even after missing the green when they chip it to the hole. They're more likely to be 3 to 10 feet away. And so there's going to be a lot of short game practice, wedges especially, 30 yards, 20 yards, up to 50 yards, because when we miss the green and you're that handicapped, you're probably only hitting, say, 3 greens around. I'll take a tiny little guess there, but that's about right. And so everything is a short game. And, getting ready, if you're going to slowly bring that 20 handicapper down to a 15, it's because he or she was way more effective getting the ball on the green on the first try once they've missed the green. And they are now making, 1 putt or 2 putts. And really, besides, warming up the long swing, up to the driver, but boy, oh boy, if you're going to be shooting lower scores and getting yourself from shooting the low 90s and getting yourself down to the mid 80s, it is really all short game, getting ready for that round of golf and getting the feel for the grass, especially if you're playing different golf courses where the greens, some are fast, some are slower. And you just have to get ready for all that. And of course, within that short game work, you should be hitting, at least a dozen or so. You should be hitting a lot of bunker shots, because, how many players, even at my place, whenever I go over to my short game area and it's 10 a.m. and nobody has been in the bunker yet, but we have 2 golf courses full of people, right? It's still raked from the Sand Pro. So, bunker shots, right? All of those short shots around the green, and, lots of folks are terrified of the bunker to begin with. And then, if you're not that good in there, you have to go in the bunker. So, I think last time we were on a call together a couple of months back, I remember Pete, mentioning, how much, focus he puts in on the short game, like from the green backwards. And, when you get ready for your round, if there's one thing that you're going to shoot 5 strokes lower, if your bunker game is ready and you have a feel for the sand and, those shots 50 yards in, and putting. Putting is everything. Because if you one putt 3 or 4 more times a day, right there's your handicap coming down.
Right. And I think, well said, James. I think also I want to add to this, too. I think something else, if I had somebody for an hour before they're going to play, and it doesn't have to be any special event, but just before they're going to go out and play, and they want to actually play well, in addition to what you just said, I think I'd want to take 5, maybe even 10 minutes, and I would want to talk a little strategy with them and say, okay, you're going to go out in the golf course today. Here's some things to be mindful of. And one of the things I think I would do, I would certainly evaluate the course they're playing, and I would look at it and look at the hole by hole myself before I would have this conversation, and I would look at some areas that they can maybe take advantage of. For instance, if you've got an approach to a green, and let's say it's 185 yards, just for argument's sake, but you've got some sort of a hazard or something that's running across, maybe it's a creek that's running across maybe 50 yards before the green. Most high handicappers, that's a daunting shot to be able to hit over that hazard. So what I would probably say to that person is I'd say, you know what, why not lay up to the hazard and then go in with a short iron? Yeah, you're going to take an extra stroke, but if you don't carry that hazard, you're now into it, and now you're playing another shot anyways. So
right.
I would want to talk to them a little. You see what I'm getting at? My point is I agree 100% with what you said. I think that you've got to focus on the short game. What most people don't, and Cindy and I have talked about this many times on the other program, Women of Golf, that we do on Tuesdays. In fact, she even mentioned it this week, and that was she talked about, you know, you're only hitting your driver maybe 14 times at best. And yet, if you're shooting 100 and knock off 14, think of how many shots you're hitting not with your driver or putting or what have you. So you're exactly right. There's a lot of room. You might maybe hit 10 fairways, maybe 8, 9, whatever fairways, depending on your level of play. There's not really a lot of improvement to be done on that end. So the improvement comes, Pete, on the other end, as James just laid out, is from the green back to the tee. There's plenty of strokes that can be made up there. And one of the things that I think is a prerequisite for becoming a player is you need to be playing and practicing quite a bit, because at this level you really need to be doing something golf-related, I believe, almost every day. Now, that doesn't mean you have to drive to the golf course and you have to get out and hit balls. There's drills that you can be doing in your own home that could be 5 minutes a day, working on your grip, things like that. Maybe you could give us some examples of things that golfers can do that's not time-consuming if they don't have a lot of time to get out to the golf course and either play or practice every week. There's things they can do. Maybe you could give us some examples of things that you've had your students do, whether at home or under some other condition other than at the golf course.
Well, you know, James hit it at the very beginning. We was talking about pre-shot routines. You can work on your pre-shot routine at home. Just start to finish. Grab the club. You know, you can put a ball down. You can pick out a target, and you can work on, you know, getting yourself with the grip, setting the club down like you should set it down, standing in there, getting your posture set. I mean, those things can be done anywhere. And so, you know, from home, that's an easy one to do, just to work at making that pre-shot routine set up and make it work. I also like to have them. I have a particular way that I like to teach pitching, and it's about a chest high swing length, and so there's plenty of room to, you know, if you're in the backyard, on the back deck, on the patio, I have them take these little practice swings with one of their wedges just to work on making a simple motion. So you can do something like that as well, and even to where just, you know, standing out in the yard, pick up a long iron or pick up a 3-wood, set up into your address position, and then hold it about 2 feet in the air and just swing it around you, and just swing it. Just swing it. Mm-hmm. You know, just get used to moving back and forth and making the club swinging and feeling how the arms rotate and how the club moves and how the arms and the shoulders and the body start to work and start to get together, and even just swing it back and forth. Don't even stop it. Swing it forward, swing it back, swing it forward, swing it back. You know, just some things that can give you some rhythm, some things that can help you in balance. But I think, you know, there's, you know, even just sitting there watching TV and having a club in your hand and just work on putting your grip on there the right way, you know, especially if we changed it. You know, I tell them that quite a bit. I make a grip change. I said, now I want you to go home, and while you're watching TV tonight, I want you to work on putting your hands on there as I just put them on there. And I want you to make sure you keep the face straight as you do it, because a lot of times you'll change the grip and look down, you know, the face is at a right angle, because they're not paying attention to how the club looks. They're just trying to get their grip right, and they're different. So, you know, those are the kinds of things at home you can practice. You know, another thing you can do that I think is really important, especially after a round, if you want to do something at home, go back through your round and write down everything that happened. And start to see the areas of your game where it's gone sideways. I know you talked about, you know, the tee shots and all that. I have a scorecard that I built for my players that has 14 tee shots, 18 second shots, and that includes the par threes, 3 or 4 third shots, which is the par fives, and then 36 putts. So that's a total of 72. And then I said, okay, after your second shot on a par, on all the par fours and fives, or your third shots, and then your shots on your par threes, if you didn't hit the green in regulation, now there's a chipping, pitching, and bunker shots. I want you to start tracking how many of those you have, along with your putts.
Yep.
And like you said, they'll come back, and I said, well, look at that. You had 14 tee balls, 18 second shots, 4 third shots, 28 putts. 28 putts, that's 66. What happened? You shot 104.
Right.
You know, so now they start looking at, oh, well, I had 11 chips, and on the first 3 holes I had all these, you know. So now they start looking at how their pitching and chipping and all that stuff was really bad. And their putts are down because they finally got it on the green close enough with a chip that they could put it in there. So, you know, there's so many other areas that they just skip over. And, James, you nailed it. It's short game. And you can't score unless you putt well, period. You can't. If you don't putt well, you're not going to score well.
Yeah, you're exactly
so
right.
We've
had a number of players, again, going back to my discussions with Cindy on Tuesdays. We get a lot of the Epson Tour players that come on, some of the winners and just some of the regular players. And almost every one of them will zero in on the short game, particularly putting, as an area that they have to diligently work on a lot. Most of them will tell you, if you say, what's the best part of your game, 90% of them will say, you know, I'm really good off the tee. I can drive the ball real well, good, you know, nice and far. It's accurate. In fact, we just had a young lady this past Tuesday, who, you know, drives it long and straight, you know, virtually every time. But where she falters a little bit is in her putting. It's a little sketchy. Sometimes it's something as simple as not reading the greens correctly or getting the speed correctly. And, you know, that can be the difference of 2 putts or 3 putts on a green. And for our high handicappers, that's an area that they lose a lot of strokes. I bet you most of the high handicappers, you could easily whittle down 10 strokes just in putting alone, if not more. So, James, this goes to, I guess, really finding a balance. You know, there's a lot of, one thing I wanted to add to what Pete was saying is, you know, there's a lot of training aids as well that you can take and work at home. You don't need to be at the golf course. There's training aids that you can do in front of a full-length mirror. You know, you can pick up a cheap mirror. If you don't have one at home, a full-length, I happen to have one, but, you know, you can get relatively cheap, and you can just lay it up against the wall or mount it on the wall if you've got a spot to put it there, and go through some of the positions. But, James, striking a balance, I think, between really effective practice and playing is key, but doing too much of either can also hinder your progress. So in other words, if you get too much practice in and you're not doing it properly, in other words, you're practicing the wrong things or ineffective practice, that can be a hindrance as well. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's very true. As we all know, you know, the players that we do get to do practicing, right? So many times at the beginning where they don't do it effectively, you know, and I find that players, you know, they're going to sit there, let's say they start with their 7-iron and they're hitting balls and they literally hit 25, 30, 40 7-irons in a row, and those 7-irons are always at like the same flag. So it never changes. It's nothing like being on the golf course where everything is changing. And so I see that's probably the number one error that I see, where they just hit too many at one time, and then there's an experience they go through. You know, let's say the first couple of shots they hit very well, then all of a sudden they don't hit one very well, or maybe it's offline, and so now they're saying to themselves, "Oh well, that one's to the right." And then suddenly the next swing, they are now aiming more left, and they're not using an alignment stick on the ground, which is really amazing. Like on my range, I think we have about 15 stalls, and you know, when you look down the range when it's completely filled, there's only 1 or 2 alignment sticks on the ground, and those players are the ones that are the lower handicaps. And so players just, you know, they don't do it the right way. You know, the easy things that you could do to help yourself be better and be more accurate. And of course, you know, when you can't even line up, and then you're sitting there and you're upset because one ball's left, one ball's right, one ball's thin, and next one's heavy. So they're in a rut. And when you really should only hit, a dozen of those, and then move to your next club, and you need to hit wedges. That effective practice, right? And so rarely does, those types of players, they just don't do it the right way. And then, like I said, I see the most where they just hit way too many balls with the same club. And they literally are just, and they end up working themselves into hitting poor shots. And now they're working on the mechanics and going through, like a dark hole, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And,
right.
And so they're really just not getting better. They're just making themselves more upset.
Well, you're right. I mean, right. A better player will, number one, they'll work with what they've got that day. They know that if they're, fading a little more than they'd like to, they're not going to try before they go out and play around, especially at the pro level. They're not going to start monkeying around with things like that. If they're hitting it and they're comfortable with where the ball's going and the flight, they'll take that to the course that day, and they can make minor adjustments in how they're playing. They don't toy with that before they're about ready to, especially when you've got, $1.5 million on the line. You're not going out and you're not going to tinker with that. And that's really obviously another difference between, the everyday golfer and the better players is they know when to leave well enough alone. Now, having said that, at the end of that round, we see many of the players will then go back to the range if they are still having that issue or have had that issue throughout their round. Sometimes it'll work itself out. Sometimes if it's a minor thing, it might be a very simple correction and a self-adjustment, and, it never happened again. But they'll still go back a lot of times and work any other bugs that may have come their way. And Pete, this goes into another area too, which we kind of touched on a little bit, but this is a big one. Tempers and negativity should have no part of your game if you want to be a good player. You got to remain positive even when the chips are down, and more importantly, you've got to be willing to keep your emotions at bay. I believe that's critical, because once you get into that negative mindset, as James was just sort of alluding to, and that's why I'm coming to you now, Pete, with this, is you're done. A bad hole, couple of shots, whatever the case is, if you let that fester and keep building, you might as well go back to the clubhouse and have a beer early, because you're going to just ruin the rest of your round because you're carrying that baggage with you hole to hole. What are your thoughts?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I think I was talking to a psychologist one day, and I think the ratio was like 4 or 5 to 1 positive thoughts to eliminate 1 negative. So it shows you how powerful the negative thoughts are. But I had this conversation with the player last night, and he's getting a little upset while we were just working on the swing. And I said, you know what? Let me just give you something about frustration. I said, you ought to have all the knowledge I have and miss hit shots. That's frustration. I said, you don't have enough knowledge to be frustrated. So there's no reason for you to be frustrated with what we're working on, because you've not done this. I said, you're a surgeon. And so I said, I said, what are you doing next Tuesday? He says, I got open heart surgery. I said, I got it. Take the day off. I'll go take care of it. I said, just talk me through it. I think I can take care of that. He just started laughing. He says, I get your point. I said, yeah, you just haven't spent enough time. And most of our players haven't spent enough time to be able to understand not only what's necessary, but to understand what they need to do to make it happen. So, in that limelight, understand that there's some difficulty to it. I mean, if you're standing on the range practicing and you hit a good, solid, straight shot, pat yourself on the back. That's hard to do. And then to repeat it, then do it a second time. My dad was always funny with the line. He always said golf is just a bunch of ones in a row, which I think is kind of funny, because you don't want 2 in a row, because that means you hit a drive out of bounds, you got to hit it again. But he said the hardest part about 3 in a row is the first 2, which I think is kind of funny. So, you got to get those first 2 before you get the third one. So you have to keep working. Right. But I think the frustration level comes in, none of us like hitting bad shots. It's no fun. But I think you can get over that frustration, ask your professional, whoever you're taking lessons from. And James, I know you've done this because you and I have had tons of conversations about this. Ask them why. Why am I hitting what I'm hitting? And if they can't answer it, I always tell them, go find somebody who can. Because you need to know that. You need to understand cause and effect, because once you understand that, your attitude towards what's going on changes immensely, because now you know how to go about changing it. So now you're working towards correct instead of fighting it incorrect. And that's a milestone there. So if you can get your players working towards correct, that creates a positive atmosphere. Now they're going to be more positive when they're playing. They can change it while they're playing. And I think that takes them over that hump you're talking about and puts them in a more positive way on the golf course all the way around.
You know, I always lay out with players, you know, the definition of insanity, because I think that's a really good one, is, you know, doing the same thing time and time again but expecting a different result. And, you know, I'll ask somebody, I'll say, well, why are you doing this? You keep repeating the same mistake. Yeah, but I hit a good shot. And I said, but out of 10 shots, you hit one good one. And they said, yeah, but if I keep doing it, I'm going to hit, you know, maybe 9 or 8 or whatever. I said, no. I said, the reason you hit that one good shot is because you did things right. The other 9 times you did something wrong. We need to find out what it is that you're doing wrong, because it's not consistent. It's not a fluke. I mean, there's no fluke in hitting a good golf shot. When you hit a good golf shot, it's because the sequencing is correct. The grip is right. The club face is striking the ball correctly. That's why it's going down the center of the fairway. That's why it's a straight shot, or it's maybe, you know, a slight fade, whatever. It's a good golf shot. You're doing something right. There's a sequence that happens. When you're doing something wrong, something is out of sequence. So we need to isolate that and find out what, and get you to repeat the good swing 90% of the time as opposed to 10% of the time. And they'll keep doing this thing, and that's why, going back to what I said about the insanity ploy, is that they'll keep doing the same things but expecting a different result, because they think that one time it worked. So if I just keep doing this, maybe it'll pan out. But what they're not factoring in is that one time, yeah, they did do something right, but they're not looking to see what it was. They're not isolating that good shot. They're focusing on the 9 bad shots and trying to see what they can do to change it. And you can't change a bad shot. It's already happened. You can only focus on the good shots. James, I want to come back to you on this one as we get ready to sort of wrap things up here. And most better players are very good course managers, as I alluded to earlier. They don't take unnecessary risks. They manage their game on the course through a number of factors, smart club selections, and they choose targets that give them the best opportunity to score but limit big mistakes. Walk us through, in your estimation, based on your experiences, how to be a good course manager, how to work yourself around a golf course, what to look for, what to avoid, what to be thinking about. And it doesn't matter what level of player, because everybody's going to be different, but in your estimation, when you're working with somebody and you're helping them with that course management, what is it you're trying to convey to them to help them be a better course manager?
So I always ask my players, you know, if I could give an example, like at my course, the first hole is a par 5, and off the tee box there's a bunker out there that they put there on purpose so that players would either go into it or they would aim away from it and avoid it. But I always ask my players, you know, what would be a good score for you on this hole, regardless of their handicap? You know, just what do you want? What would be a good score that you'd be happy with? You know, sometimes I hear, especially from the ladies, you know, where they would be happy with a 7, which is like a double bogey, par 5.
Right.
And some say birdie, some, you know, I get different answers, right? But and I say to them, I say, well, you know, if you're happy with a 6 here, but the scorecards that we look at, you know, you typically make 7, 8, or 9. You know, I say, well, think about it. You know, you have this hole's, you know, 500 yards long, and you're saying that you're willing to take 6 shots. So I say, okay, well, you know, what could you hit off the tee? You know, you could hit 5 iron off the tee. You could hit 7 iron off the tee. I mean, a par 5 divided in 3 from 500 yards, and you basically have 165 yards a shot. You could hit that club 3 times and be on the green putting for birdie. And so, you know, I'm always thinking about, I find it's interesting, the average golfer, whenever they look off of the tee box, they're always looking to see where the trouble is. And they are aiming very, very far away from the trouble, and trouble, even a bunker. And so they typically are aiming into the woods or into some other type of condition and may make a bad swing just from being aligned wrong. Mm-hmm. But I'm always trying to help them say, listen, if you're worried about going here, why can't you just hit a hybrid off the tee and then hit the hybrid again? Hit it a couple of times, and all of a sudden now you're right by the green. And you said the 6 is acceptable, but now you actually can make a 5. And so when it comes to that strategy, the majority of golfers, just take the driver. And they're like, well, I can hit down there. And I'm like, okay, go ahead. But out of 10 rounds of golf, that driver is in play 3 or 4 times, and it's in the woods the other, 5, 6 times, right?
7.
Easily.
Right. Right.
And so there's, and how do you, at the end of the day, to get those scores down, how are you going to eliminate every penalty, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is really the key, because all of those golfers that have higher handicaps, they are losing, a sleeve of balls a day, and they have a lot of penalties. They have 5 to 10 penalties a day. And so that's kind of, whenever I'm walking my players through, I'm like, all right, well, how are we going to not have a single penalty? And how are you not going to lose your original golf ball?
Exactly. And, just to go back to the example you gave with the 6, I mean, your players now beside the green in 2 shots by changing the club selection. Now they've got 4 shots in order to get that 6. They've got 4 shots to get it in the hole from just off the green. So if they work on their chipping or short pitch shots or what have you, if they really become stellar there, like you said, their likelihood of getting that 6 is greatly increased, and they might get a 5. Or they might be lucky, and like Colin Montgomery did in the Senior PGA Championship this past weekend, might hole out a couple of times. And, so there's a lot of things that can happen. Pete, I think another area that I think we're going to wrap up here, but I want you to finish off on, because this is, I think, really is what's going to make the difference between becoming a really good player and not such a good player. And this is one area that I guarantee if you were to poll 90% of the players out there that we're working with on, day to day, would not be able to give you a competent or confident answer. And that is how far they hit each club. Walk us through this. Why is that important, number one? And then what can they do to better get those numbers together? There's lots of options I know that are out there, but what should they be doing to get those numbers so that when they walk out in the golf course, they can confidently select the right club that they need at any given shot because they know their numbers? Walk us through it.
Yeah, that's a great question. First and foremost, every range has flags out there. Most everybody has a range finder now. They can pinpoint something or some kind of target out there. Launch monitors, even the mini ones, are getting a little cheaper, which can give them, club speed, ball speed, carry distance, and things like that. So they can start working with some of those, or if the club has one, they can borrow it. But yeah, you've got to start hitting shots and understanding how far they go, and the real distances that they go. It's not the situation where 3 years ago with the downwind, I hit a 6-iron on this par 3, so I'm going to hit 6-iron every time since. But you've got to understand what your clubs do, not only from the long clubs, but you also have to understand what your wedges do. You have to spend time controlling the distances that you fly the ball with your wedges, and that's from 100 yards back to the green. And so you've got to practice, you've got to repeat, you've got to keep doing it. You've got to use, whether you're using a rangefinder or whether you're using where they're landing, or whether you're using a ball monitor, because the tour guys know it. I mean, I ran through a series with this one particular tour player, and I'd say, all right, back left pin, 189 yards. We had the launch monitor out there, and sure enough, he hits at 189. I said, all right, 144. He hits at 144. 128. He hits at 128. So, I mean, they know their yardages. And these amateurs, that's not a hard thing to do, to understand how far your golf balls go. Now, granted, you got to make contact. Obviously, if the contact's not very good, then you're not going to get a true value of what's going on. But they also have to understand that day to day, that's going to change. Because I felt pretty good today hitting balls, but yesterday I didn't feel very good at all. See, I didn't hit them as far yesterday as I did today, but I knew that, so that's okay. I just adjust when I'm out on the golf course. But you got to get a baseline, and then from that baseline you can adjust as necessary. But hit to some flags. If you don't have a rangefinder, I'm sure somebody on the range knows how far the pins are. Start practicing that way. If somebody has a launch monitor you can use, I'd highly recommend that because it can give you those carry distances. There's several ways you can go about learning, what those distances are and controlling that golf ball. And then I think to your point you were talking about before, James, with that par 5, if they understand the distances that they go and they can split that par 5 into thirds, I think they're going to find themselves scoring a heck of a lot better, understanding that, you don't have to bomb it out there off the tee to try to figure out how to conquer a par 5. Because, as you said, most of the times they'll hit it out of play. So I think
right.
There's – yeah, go ahead.
No, please finish your thought.
No, I said so there's all kinds of ways where they can go out and get those yardages, but don't neglect the short game yardages. You need to understand those too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I say I think the better players, as James was pointing out, at his club, he looks down, he sees maybe two guys with alignment sticks, and they're the low handicap players. And they're doing that because they know that those particular aids are giving them valuable information they need. And it's the same thing with knowing your distances. When you know the distances that you're hitting each club, an actual distance, not just, as you said, a stiff wind comes up behind you and you get an extra 10 or 15 yard carry, but the next time you come out, the wind's now in your face and you're losing that 10 or 15 yards. That's not an accurate assessment of the distance. So you want to get in ideal conditions. You want to know how far you hit each club, how far you carry each club, and maybe in some instances you're going to get a favorable roll. Others you may not. It may just stick or plug, depending if it's rained or if the course is wet. And then you also, what I like to do sometimes, and it's depending on how the range is set up, some ranges kind of have a little bit of an oval shape to them where they go around. I'll even go in and find a spot where I've got a little bit of wind in my face so that I can get an idea of what the wind that particular day is going to do. If I'm hitting into the wind, how strong of a wind is it? I'm going to get a better assessment of how that wind is going to affect my golf ball that particular day. And conversely, if I swing around the other side and maybe now the wind is in a different position and it's more coming from one side or the other, that's valuable information as well. And so there's a lot of things that you can do in a practice session or a warm-up session to give yourself information. And if you want to become a better player, and I think you both would agree with this, is it's number one, certainly you've got to develop the skill of hitting good golf shots and hitting it consistent. But it's also when you gather the right information to make an informed decision. If you go and buy a car, you're not just, I'm going to go and buy that. You're doing your homework. You're finding out, okay, what is it? What are the benefits of this particular vehicle? What is it I'm looking for? And obviously the looks are going to be a big factor, but you're also looking at the performance, and you're looking at what value you're going to get because you're about to make a big purchase. Same thing with your house. You're doing the same thing. There's certain things that you're looking for. Well, in your golf game, again, it's the same thing. You're gathering information, and you're compiling that information, and you're making an informed decision. And sometimes it may or may not work out, but that's okay. You've still made an informed decision. Now you can assess the either the positive or the negative out of it. And if it's something negative, then you focus on that after your round. But the idea is you want to gather that information as much as possible and make an informed decision. And to go to your point that you made right from the get-go, James, and that is your pre-shot routine. Getting into a consistent pre-shot routine. I was at Pinehurst a few weeks ago for a short trip, and one of the things that I noticed with a lot of folks out there was they did not have a good pre-shot routine. Even in their practice sessions, most of them didn't even go through a routine. Most of them just sat there, raked, and hit balls. So there's a lot of things to be considered, and I think we covered a lot of them. What do you think, guys?
Good show.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah, they could get a lot out of this one for sure.
Well, I want to thank both of you for once again stepping up and sharing your expertise and your knowledge with the listeners. And I think, as I said in the beginning, if you're coming a little bit later, maybe you didn't catch it all, you can go and to the link blogtalkradio.com /Golf Talk Live at the end of the show, and you can listen to this past segment that just passed now on the recorded version. You can listen to its entirety and maybe pick up some of the points that you might have missed. But, I think it's important to really think about, and I'm going to give each of you to maybe give a closing thought, and then at the same time when you're done that, let the folks know how they can best reach out to you if they want to. But I'm going to go in a different order. Pete, I'm going to start with you. But any closing thoughts on what we talked about tonight, just sort of as a wrap-up, and then James, I'll let you do the same. And then, as I said, don't forget to let the folks know if they want to reach out, the best way to do that.
Well, I think more than anything else, it's, get yourself a pre-shot routine. It doesn't matter what it is. Develop some consistency in how you put yourself in a position to hit a golf ball. And then, work your practice time so that you can get more control over the ball. I think that's not necessarily hitting full swings all the time either. Work some half shots, work some slower swings, get to where you can control and hit some contact and control the ball, and then work yourself back up to it. And, stay on a positive note and try to gather as much knowledge as you can. There's a lot of great coaches out there that have a lot of great knowledge, and you can even find them on some of these different social media channels just to get a little bit of insight. But I think, do your homework, like you said. If you're going to take it to taking a swing, do your homework, research it, and get to where you can understand what you're trying to do. And I think that'll really take you a long way. And most definitely don't avoid the short game. You have to have a short game or you just can't score. There's just no ifs and ands or buts about it. All of those good players have good short games. There's a reason why they score, because they can all do it. So, don't neglect the short shots either. But if they need to get a hold of me, they can go to PeteBuchananGolf.com. All my contact information's in there. And as I always say, contact me. Let's start a conversation. And just like I was talking about, let's talk about where your game is and what the things we can do to up your knowledge and make it a little bit more fun for you and play better golf.
That's right. Well said. Knowledge is power. James?
Yes. Yes, I ditto what Pete just said, routine, and I would love to see everyone taking a lot more time on the range, and what that means is you shouldn't be hitting more than like 2 balls a minute, and it should be more like you're actually on the golf course when you're playing, and it takes a lot more time after you've hit your shot, and then you have to wait for all your friends to play. So I love 2 balls a minute is kind of like my little program. And I would just copy what Pete just said. All that is excellent. Short game, short game, short game. For me, I can be found at JamesKyleGolfAcademy.com, and I teach full-time at Eastlake Woodlands Country Club, which is located in Oldsmar, Florida, and a little bit online here and there, but all of that information can be found on my website. And other than that, Pete and Ted, I really thank you all, for having me on. This was great.
I appreciate it, guys. As always, fantastic job, and always thoroughly enjoy our conversations. And hopefully people will take away a little nugget here and there. And as I said, go back and listen to the program again. And there's always some good information. And any other programs that you might have missed, you can go and visit that link, blogtalkradio.com /Golf Talk Live, and go down to the on-demand section and listen to all of the previously aired shows, including tonight's in its entirety. But guys, thank you as always. Have a great weekend, and I look forward to you joining me next time on the Coach's Corner panel. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, you too. Thanks, Ted. Thanks, James.
Take care. Good night. Thank you.
All right, that was James Kyle and Pete Buchanan joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. We talked about becoming a good player. We talked about a lot of great things. And hopefully, as I said, you can take away a few nuggets of information. There's a lot to unpack there, but I think we covered most of it. All right, when I come back, I'm going to be speaking with my very special guest, the founder of GolfForever, Dr. Jeremy James. We'll be right back.
The following ad is sponsored by Golf Tips Magazine.
Are you tired of being short off the tee? And what about those 3 putts? Forget about it. It's time you got serious about your game. Golf Tips, the most in-depth magazine in the industry. For over 30 years, Golf Tips has delivered expert content such as the latest golf instruction from America's top pros. Simple to follow practice and game improvement drills, fitness and mental game tips, equipment, training aids, accessory and apparel reviews, golf destinations and travel tips for every budget, and so much more. Don't miss a single issue. Go to golftipsmag.com and subscribe today.
All right, welcome back, and very excited to be joined by this evening's guest. Again, we're going to get into a very interesting discussion about his business, GolfForever. We'll tell you a little bit about that here in just a moment, but let me introduce him. My very special guest this evening is Dr. Jeremy James. He is a doctor of chiropractic and also a certified strength and conditioning specialist, as well as the founder of GolfForever. He spent a decade or so helping golfers, professional and Olympic athletes, Fortune 500 CEOs, and men and women from all walks of life to overcome pain and to get back to the sports and activities and daily life that they love. He's also the co-author of the best-selling Younger Next Year back book and the former director of the Aspen Club Back Institute. GolfForever is the digital manifestation of his and his expert team's proven methods to help golfers of all ages and abilities play without limits for as long as they live. And now he's teamed up with two experts in golf and sports performance, of course, PGA player Justin Leonard and Bill Fabrosini. They've joined him as part of the team as well, and we'll talk about some other things. But please welcome my very special guest, Dr. Jeremy James. Good evening, Jeremy. How are you?
I'm doing well, Ted. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you very much for taking time out of your day and early evening and spending it with me here on Golf Talk Live. And we got a lot to talk about, as I said, but I think we'll get through everything just well in the next little bit. First off, let me just ask, and I do this with most new guests that have been on here. Maybe just give us a little bit more about your background, what you sort of specialize in, and just tell us a little bit about your own golf experience.
Sure. And is the audio okay, Ted?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, great. Well, I got into this business, as you mentioned in the intro there. I had a clinic in Aspen, Colorado for over a decade, and we were really seen as the clinic of last resort for people struggling with chronic joint pain. And most of them were chronic low back pain, chronic meaning they've had it for a very long time. They've tried various other things, drugs, surgery, etc., without success, and they would come out to our clinic and stay with us for anywhere from a couple of weeks to a couple of months and work with my staff and I. And we got very good at addressing chronic pain, and a large subset of those people were golfers. And so, early in my career, I had to become extremely familiar with the mechanics of the swing, what the swing does to the human body, and how you can be proactive in preventing the breakdown in the joints and tissues that cause pain, and how to relieve it. And so, as you can imagine, golf does very predictable things to the body. It's a repetitive, asymmetrical motion. You're doing it over and over and over, and there's some things that everybody needs to be doing to keep their bodies fit and healthy to be able to do that. And last thing I'll say here is that what we noticed early on with our subset of golfers was that the same strategies and techniques we were using to get them over pain would dramatically improve their games, because, we're working on hip mobility, we're working on core strength, we're working on shoulder and thoracic mobility, and just all those things that are crucial to relieving back pain are also critical to improving your game.
Yeah, and you touch on a great point. We're going to get into that here in just a moment. But, mobility and flexibility for a golfer, if you don't have that, is a killer. Because if you don't have because you obviously have to have that mobility, and you especially have to have flexibility to be able to generate club head speed, to get the ball out there, to be able to enjoy this game. And if your muscles are tense all the time, or they're not, you don't have a lot of mobility in your body, then obviously it's going to restrict your golf swing, and all kinds of problems can arise from that. So we're going to talk about that. But before we do that, I want to, just so that everybody has a clear understanding, and we'll talk about specifically how and why you started it. You've touched on a little bit. But explain what GolfForever is, exactly what it is, and what the business model is, if you will.
Sure. So GolfForever is both it's a golf trading system, and it consists of streaming content delivered to the user via an application that you can stream on your phone or television, and it couples with a piece of hardware, a piece of training equipment that you can use in your home attached to anything. And basically, as you mentioned in your intro, when we started this, I set out to replicate as close as possible what we were doing in our clinic. And so on that note, when you start with GolfForever, you take a self-assessment, and it's a combination of questions and actually putting you through some movements and exercises and asking for your feedback on those. And we take all that information, and our algorithm creates a customized golf fitness and training program unique to your body's needs, and whether you've come to relieve pain or you've come to increase your club head speed, work on core strength, you name it. The assessment is going to tease that out, and it's going to give you a program just for you that is safe. Very importantly, we're addressing any kind of deficiencies you may have that are identified in that assessment right off the bat, and then every day you're given a new routine or workout that is progressive over time, that slowly and safely builds to get you to where you're working with the highest level that your body can produce as far as strength output, all done safely. So hope that makes sense. The device we call the GolfForever Swing Trainer. It's a asymmetrical bar, basically training system. It's a cord with a bar. You attach it anywhere in your home, and you follow along with the workouts, and it reproduces a lot of the forces that you have in the golf swing and builds strength in a way that is, that directly correlates to the swing.
Yeah, and that's important because, there's a lot of training aids on the market that try to emulate a lot of that, but they don't actually do what your product does. And I want to go back to the assessments for just a second, because I think this is really important. I think more golfers now, because they've seen what the pros have done, they've watched professional golfers, and they know that they have certainly access to things that the average golfer doesn't have, personal trainers and things like that. But having an assessment like this is important, as you just pointed out. How often should we be doing that? Is this something that it should be annual? As for instance, we're in the Northeast and Northwest, where the winter is starting to fizzle out, and we're getting into some good weather now for those that live up there. They're coming out to the golf course. Is this something that they should be doing every season? At the beginning of the season, to get a new assessment, say where we're at physically, to see what adjustments or tweaks might need to do, and then obviously, again, catering the program that GolfForever provides accordingly. Is that something that, would you agree with that that's something that we should be doing on a regular basis, once a season, or maybe even a couple of times a season? What are your thoughts here?
That's a great question, really intuitive. So we have a reassessment function built into the program, and we're currently working on building it out to be far more granular. But basically what happens is you go through, we have various levels when you start your program, and the workouts are rated front tees, middle tees, back tees. And depending on why you joined, like for instance, let's say you joined for back pain, you're going to be triggered to give us feedback of when you're ready to move out of a more pain-focused protocol into one that's more focused on power and endurance. If you joined, for example, to increase your distance and club head speed, and your assessment showed us that you performed very well already, then you're going to, right off the bat, be getting more challenging content. But again, to your point, again, a great question, you are being reassessed at different intervals depending upon your reason for joining. So in essence, if you're using our program, it takes care of it automatically. If you're talking about the general public who may be working with a trainer or something like that, a great trainer should be reassessing you every workout. They may not be telling you, but they should be constantly looking for areas that you struggled in, areas that you're improving upon, and that needs to be a very fluid, kind of progressive process, which is what we've tried to build into the application.
Yeah, and certainly I think going through your process, I think, is a good way because it is giving that sort of automatic reassessment. I think, too, and I want to get your thoughts on this, Jeremy, is even if you're not a player, for those listening that necessarily is struggling with a back issue or some other physical issue, maybe you're in pretty good shape and maybe you're already hitting the ball a long way. This is a program that actually can, and I know we're going to get into this a little bit more, but is also a great maintenance program as well for those that maybe are a little better skilled or maybe in better shape, a little younger is what I'm trying to politely say. Maybe you're a little younger and don't suffer from some of the back problems that some of us older guys do. But this can also be a great program to keep everything flowing properly as part of a maintenance program as well. Would that be accurate?
It's accurate and then some. I don't know if you know, but Scotty Scheffler just became our brand ambassador, and he did that because he has been working with one of our GolfForever instructors, Dr. Troy Van Biesen, his entire career, and he started working with our swing trainer back in November, and gives credit, in large part with other things he's been doing to his improvement this season. So it's not just maintenance for those kind of players. Scotty Scheffler and others literally credit this with taking their game to another level. There's almost always room for an athlete to improve. My team and I have worked with countless pro athletes, and it's pretty surprising, those type A type people, which whether we're talking about athletes or my clients that I used to get in the clinic, they want to get in there and they want to do what? They want to throw around the heaviest weight they can in the fastest way possible. And often, they do that at expense to their body, and they're not learning what we call in the program the fundamentals of movement, of joint health, because joint health and the ability to generate power are closely tied together. They're very, if you can't stabilize your body and stack your joints in good posture, you're not going to be able to produce maximum force. So, yeah, it's maintenance, but even more than that, it should be for the vast majority of people out there. It's going to give them significant improvement in their game.
Right. And just on a side note, I think a lot of your former clients throwing that heavy weight around actually kept the clinic that much busier for you. So, I mean, it was good for you, maybe not so much for them in the long run. But, no, just kidding here, of course. But you're exactly right. And Scotty, Scotty Scheffler, just for those that aren't in tune, won this year's Masters tournament. So obviously that's a great feather to have in your cap. Obviously he has some great skill set, but the fact that he's giving you guys credit for really helping to step his game up, obviously it showed when he played in the Masters this year. You also have another player who's most the listeners will know him as well, and that's Justin Leonard. I mentioned him in the opening credits and that. When and how did Justin get involved?
So Justin's just been wonderful to work with, like I said off the bat. When this was just an idea, Justin and I both live in the same very small community, the Roaring Fork Valley, Aspen, Colorado. And so you kind of know, it's a small town. People tend to know each other. Knew of Justin. He knew of me. We were kind of casual, acquaintance around town. But many of my former patients and clients who I was bringing on as investors when this was just an idea, knew Justin well, and they introduced us, and they said, you guys need to get to know each other because I think there could be, something that could work here. And the more he and I talked, and we found out that we shared a lot of the same philosophy about health and fitness and the approach to keeping a golfer healthy, it just made absolute sense. So, I can't thank Justin enough for just really getting on board with us when it was just an idea, putting his name on it, when he had faith in what we were going to do because he knew the success stories around our community. And he really taught me about, the rigors of being on the tour and what it does to your body. And it gave me a lot of perspective, from that angle, which I didn't have. I was, primarily working with the everyday golfer the amateur golfer, and to hear from him what it's like to play at that level and what it does to your body was very helpful.
Well, and as you mentioned, you're putting together, it's not just a physical product that you're offering, but there's actually a program that they're working through. So that information is valuable to you when putting this whole thing together, because you're getting it right from the proverbial horse's mouth of what the circumstances that these guys are, and the gals too on the LPGA, that they're dealing with day in, day out, some of the problems that they're being faced with and so forth. So as you're putting the various protocols together, you're able to gather from their experience, because as I understand, I mean, you're not a professional golfer. I mean, certainly I know you play golf and that, but so it's great that you were able to tap into some of that knowledge to help put through what you needed to put through. I want to ask you an interesting question, because you mentioned, about throwing some heavier weight around and that. And this is something that I think a lot of, it's more, I'm going to throw men under the bus here, because I think women are a lot smarter than we are. And I'm right. So
I know you're right.
But golf has some very unique golf-specific exercises that are going to be conducive to making you a better player. And there's obviously what we call the more traditional. I mean, I certainly go to the gym and I work out, but being a golf professional myself, I know that lifting a bunch of big dumbbells around is not going to really be good for me if I want to be a better player. So talk about that a little bit, because there is a difference. And why is there a difference, and why is it important that if you're trying to improve your golf game, not saying there's anything wrong with going out and doing a good workout, but if you're going to be or want to become a better player, there are certain specific exercises that are better for you than what we traditionally might be used to. Maybe you could walk us through a little bit of that.
Well, that is such a great setup, and I can tell that you really have done a lot of, you know a lot about this topic. So thank you for these great questions. And you're right to pick on the men, because thank you. You're right to pick on the men, because it's absolutely true. Whether we're talking about my days in the clinic or the golfers that we're talking about now, I'd say most people, most golfers that go to the gym and do a workout, they do one that's incredibly inefficient, usually risky and dangerous, and, just largely a waste of time. Golf is about balance. It's about coordination. It's about being able to produce rotational force. And those things take, you have to work out in a specific way. And so let's take the example, I think you mentioned like a bench press. So think about a bench press. You're lying on your back and you're pressing a lot of weight, from a lying down position straight over your head. Just break that down. Number one, you're lying on your back, something you're never going to do in golf. It's usually best, unless you're rehabilitating something, to train in positions similar to what you're training for, right? So
right.
An example of how we would do that differently in our program is, with the swing trainer, it's a bar, you're standing and gripping it. It only has a cord on one side, so it's always pulling you to the opposite side. You're pressing, so on the bench press, you're working your shoulders and your pecs, and that's pretty much it. When you're standing doing that with something that's asymmetrical, you're working your core to stabilize you, because you don't have that bench to lean against. You're working your balance, because that cord's trying to pull you off balance. And then most importantly for golf, since we have the cord on one side, and I don't know if you can visualize that, but basically you're holding a bar, and there's a resistance on one end. Even if you're doing something as simple as a press, you're still working rotational strength. That thing's trying to pull you, say the cord's on the right and you're pushing, it's trying to pull you to the right. You're using your core to resist rotational force. So it takes something as simple as a press, and you're doing balance, you're doing coordination, you're doing core strength, and importantly, you're doing rotational power, and you're doing it safely, because your body's ability to maintain perfect posture when you're doing that is your limiting factor. Whereas when you're lying on a bench, you can load that thing up with, you're not going to know until you start if that's a level of weight that's going to injure your rotator cuff or your
right.
the shoulder joint, whereas your body breaks down when you're doing exercises like we present them, and that's too much. I hope that makes sense. It's a little technical, but hope I answered your question there.
No, that makes perfect sense. And again, obviously we'll direct everybody to the website, as we finish up a little bit later. But obviously we don't have the option of a visual here, but they'll be able to go, and I know you've got some great videos on there that sort of walk them through what we're talking about here tonight. But I want to just break it down and give them a little bit of an idea. And the reason why I say this for men is because men typically are more, and we see this even on the tour level, it's more about power. It's more about getting, longer off the tee and that sort of thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Where, as women tend to be more, certainly they want to get distance and increase the power and so forth too, but they're more focused on the finesse part of the game, the short game and things like that. And so, they're not looking to bulk up. And, I'm sure you could probably attest this, because I know on the lesson tee with the women, when I ask them about, I don't do a full assessment what you do, but I'll ask them about certain things before I get into instruction. I'll ask them, what pain they have, and 90% of them say to you, it's my husband and he's sitting in the car. But, he, I throw a little humor in there. But, that's true, that they're looking for something different. So, again, you have to be able to, as you pointed out earlier, is you have to find what works for you, because we're all different. And you have different protocols through your training program that is applicable for different situations, because not everybody's going to be the same. As I mentioned earlier, not everybody's maybe having a back issue, or maybe not everybody's looking to increase distance. Maybe they're hitting it far enough now, but there's other issues. So the fact that the assessment is going to guide them in the right place, and then the program that you have there is going to help walk them through whatever the situation may be and help them improve that area, I think is very, very important as golfers that we want to get better. So when did you know you were really right on the right track, if you will, with this program? I mean, obviously you've been a chiropractor, you've done that for a number of years, you've seen a lot of things, but when did the sort of the switch go on for you and you say, okay, you know what, I think we're on the right track here. I think we can help a lot of golfers. What was that sort of defining moment for you?
Again, another great question. So just to go back a bit in the history for some context here, the first program we launched was called GolfForever, and it was a general back pain relief program for the public. And, I thought at the time I was trying to, much like I'm doing with GolfForever, get this information out to everybody at an affordable price that was suffering with back pain. And what we saw, which is funny, same thing we saw in our clinic, part of the GolfForever assessment was asking people what sports or activities they wanted to get back to that pain had stopped them from doing. And the number one, as you can guess, it was golf. And we also saw that the golfers on that platform were the most highly engaged and were the ones that were sticking around for a very long time. So
right.
We knew we had something right then, and that's around the time that Justin and I started talking, and we launched a very, very basic version of GolfForever shortly thereafter, and sure enough, we saw immediately that people were using it regularly, far more regularly, 4 or 5 times a week instead of 1 or 2, and that they were renewing month after month. And it was pretty obvious, right off the bat, as soon as we got that up. And at that point, we decided to go all in, and we haven't looked back since. That was about 2 years ago, and we launched what I like to call the real version of the application about a year and a half ago now, which contained the interactive assessment and the customized programs. If you don't mind, I wanted to address what you said before that, though, because I think it's so important. We talk about picking on men again and saying, they want to throw around heavy weights. You can do that, and you will get to that in the GolfForever program if that's why you're there. If you want to get to a very, very high level of athleticism, where you're doing very complicated moves with heavy resistance, you're going to get there. The difference is you're going to get there in a safe way that makes you perform much better. And the last thing I say, a little anecdote here, is my colleague, who's one of the GolfForever instructors, Bill Fabricini. I remember he worked with a very famous, at the time, a very famous NBA center, and the NBA center had come to him for knee pain. And, very, very tall guy, just had been powering through because of his brute strength and size his whole career. We watched film of him, watched him moving in the clinic, and his knees were just collapsing in every time he came off a rebound. And that's why he was having knee pain, and he just had a terrible, what we would call squat pattern. He was absolutely not using the muscles in his buttocks, and he had gotten by, and he was about 31 or 32 at the time. He had gotten by to that point in his career by just powering through it with brute strength, but his body was just starting to break down, and he was starting to have knee pain because nobody had ever taught him the proper way to do something as simple as a squat, where he's engaging the muscles in his buttocks, which takes loads off your knees. And just teaching him that, Bill taught him that, made his knee pain go away, obviously, but it also gave him more vertical height on his jump. So I just want to make that clear. I think it's a critical point.
No, I couldn't agree more. And you're right. Again, as people go through whatever their assessment is here, that's going to dictate really where they're going to need the help. And, yeah, it might be more power. It might be, to help with some of the injuries or pain that they're dealing with. And that's why I'm saying it. But, obviously I was just joking earlier about the men and the women. But the truth of the matter is, men tend to focus on a different area of the game, I think, than most women do, and that's why I sort of threw that in there. Now, obviously, there were some challenges in part in developing GolfForever. What were some of the challenges in first putting this together?
There were many. I reread and see the movies about startups, and it's a cliche, but it's so true. I mean, it's breaking into golf. Even with the help of Justin Leonard, it just takes time, and we're trying to almost start like kind of a new industry. It's probably not the right word, but something new. And we were right on time in the fact that this year, last year, or the past few years, golfers are really embracing golf fitness, but still, we were trying to, so to answer your question in a short way, it was the marketing and the selling of it. Developing the product and making it effective was the easy part. Trying to explain to our would-be customers what this was and how it worked and why you should do it was the hard part. We finally, I think, gotten that down. It's always a work in progress, but I think we're doing well now. But that by far was the hardest part, and just trying to succinctly explain to someone in something like an ad was very challenging. This format is amazing because you're asking great questions and we have time to talk. But if you're talking a 15-second ad or a static ad with a picture, that was by far the most challenging part.
Yeah, it's difficult to. You're right. It's difficult to convey that message in a short, even in a 30-second video or even a minute-long video. It's very difficult. And the problem is in today's society is everybody's looking for instant gratification. So if you've got a long video, it gets to a point where people are. I don't care how well produced it is. If it's over a certain period of time, people will start to tune out. And this is an area. I mean, I can speak as a golf instructor. I can tell you right now, one of the big problems that we have is getting people to commit to what we're having them do. So they'll come to us for a lesson and they'll say, okay, I want to hit the ball further, or I want to be more accurate off the tee, and we'll give them drills and things that are going to be conducive to accomplishing that. And then they walk away, they'll do it while they're there with you, but then, before they come for the next lesson, they haven't gone to the practice tee, or they haven't gone to the range to work on any of these things. So, because it's not that they don't want to improve, but there's an inherent laziness in people. Now, A-type personalities you mentioned earlier, they're out there, go. They know what it takes to be at the highest level. But for the average folks out there, it's challenging because you've got to be able to convey that message that this is going to be good for you. And, they hear, they're getting marketed to 1,000 different ways from different people outside of this industry. So they've heard it, it all before. So you're right. It's a very, very challenging, and I could see where that would be challenging. But once you kind of get them involved and they get out there and they start seeing the benefits, then you can pretty much throw the marketing aside, because just by testimonial and word of mouth, they're going to say, hey, this thing actually works, and I'm really seeing some benefits. So that's where the fun comes in, because now all of your hard labor has sort of come together and come to fruition. Which reminded me, I wanted to ask you is, what's been some of the feedback? Obviously, you've had some great feedback from some of the golfers that you've heard.
Well, thank you. And first of all, I want to say I can empathize with what you just said. I'm sure that is so challenging. And to your point, we end every one of our videos by reminding people that change comes with commitment. I mean, we are drilling that into people's heads. That literally, that's how we end every video. But I also think, anecdotally, that's probably why initially we had such a good start, because pain is a powerful motivator, and we had that as our first kind of user group for GolfForever. It's morphed now to where pain relief is not the majority of people that join, but we started with that. And you have somebody in serious pain, you've got their attention. So that helped us in that regard, I think. So I can really, really empathize with you on that one, and be happy to offline on how to help motivate people, because that's probably number 2 of the issues we've had to attack and work on.
Well,
so I'm sorry.
everybody.
What was the question?
Yeah, so no, just some of the feedback that you've had from some of the golfers that have used GolfForever. What obviously you, I'm sure, had some great feedback from it, from those that have actually gone out and tried it and worked through some of the programming and that. What's been some of the feedback?
So we do get a lot of feedback. We do a lot of surveys, and two of the stats that I'm very proud of are this. We have an 80, I think it's the last time I looked, 85 or 86% free trial conversion rate. So 86% of the people that start the free trial convert to a paid customer. And then to me, this is the biggest one, is that we have 2 subscriptions. One is a monthly where you pay per month, and one is a yearly where you pay up front for a year and you get a discount.
Sure.
Our yearly reconversion rate, so people that have done a year and sign up for a second year, is just under, I think it's the last time I looked, is 71%. I was going to say under 75, but that's
great.
Lot. So,
yeah,
the
that's
feedback
very good.
that we hear, thank you. The feedback that we hear very consistently is that, it's increased my distance. I'm more consistent. Importantly, I'm able to play more rounds without needing as much downtime. I'm able to perform at a higher level on 18 holes instead of 9, or back-to-back days. And then on the non-golf side, we hear a lot of, this has really improved my flexibility, which I'd like to touch on the difference between flexibility and mobility, but this has really improved my flexibility. I move better. I feel great out of bed. I just feel stronger, younger, more fluid, more athletic. Those are consistent things we hear across the board. Yeah,
and that's one of the things that's very unique about this. As I said, there's a lot of different things that people are being introduced to, and I think it's important that this is hitting all levels of golfers. It's not just players like Scotty Scheffler and Justin Leonard that are using these and getting benefits. Obviously, they're reaping benefits at a high level, but this is something that even our high handicap golfers out there can benefit from. And that's what they're looking for. They're all looking for, I don't like using the word edge or even advantage, but because they're kind of cliche. But the truth of the matter is, if you want to, just to go back to the instructional side, we always get somebody comes up and says, well, I was watching so-and-so on the tour the other day, and I'd really like to have a swing like theirs. And to go to your point is about commitment. Well, yeah, I can give you a swing similar. I can't give it exact because you're different size, shape, or whatever, but I can give you a similar swing, but it's how much are you willing to commit? And that's been a big problem in instruction, is getting people to commit. They want to be able to score, break 90 or 80 or whatever the case, or shoot par, but are they willing to put the level of commitment in? And one of the big factors that deters, especially some of the older golfers out there, is pain level. If they're experiencing pain or discomfort, they're less likely. They may still go out and play 9 holes or whatever, but they're less likely to engage in practice routines or things like that because it's uncomfortable for them. So this is something, as you've expressed already, that's really helping them to overcome some of that in a safe way. What has been some of the common pains that you've been identified from some of the GolfForever users? What have been some of the pains? Obviously, lower back is a common one, but what are some of the other things that have sort of come out through your studies and feedback?
So in a descending order, lower back, number one by a very wide margin. I think, by like 60%.
Sure.
If you're looking at 100% total, followed by neck and shoulder. We group those together because there's a lot of similar underlying causes there. Followed by elbow, golfer's elbow, then knee, and then I think the last one that we have is foot ankle, but it's so minimal we barely even register it. But I mean, the big ones are low back and then shoulder / neck.
Yeah, and obviously hip is another area too that people have issues with as well. So
it is, and I apologize.
We yeah, golfer's hips. That's another one.
We lump that in with low back pain because the underlying causes are similar there as well. So apologies, I should have pointed that out.
Yeah, no problem. So if somebody's going through the GolfForever system, and again, maybe they've done it now for a couple of years, and it's becoming more sort of some kind of a maintenance program that they can migrate to. We talked about that a little bit earlier. So they've accomplished some of the things. Maybe now they've become more pain-free as a result of working through the programs, and now it's just a matter of ingraining good habits and good training, if you will, through that. This is something that they can easily transition or migrate to. Am I correct? And if so, maybe you can walk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we can talk about different demographics in different ways. If you have juniors, their bodies are continuing to grow and change in different ways with the growth plates, et cetera. So there's always work to be done in a progressive manner up into the mid-20s. If we're talking about somebody over 40, as you age, you're fighting against a tide. So the idea of kind of plateauing or maintenance, it isn't really an accurate description if we're talking about that user group, because a person's body in their 50s is very different from their 40s, and 60s is different from 50s, et cetera. And so there's always different things you need to be focusing on. For example, we talked about balance earlier. If we're talking about somebody in their 60s, balance naturally declines as you age if you don't challenge it and train it. If you do challenge it and train it, it can actually improve. You can have the best balance of your life. That's a true statement. It sounds extraordinary, but it's true. It's backed by studies. So it's one example of how the way that we've designed this program, where one day you may be working on balance, one day it might be agility, one day it might be a coordination, one day it's rotational power, one day it's upper body strength, one day it's lower. We're constantly progressing and challenging you. If we're talking about somebody in the 20 to 30 demographic, it's similar. It's not exactly the same, but we're going to be increasing load more often than we're going to be increasing the variety of the goal of each workout. We're going to be increasing resistance. We're going to up the tempo, things like that. So, we've been in this a couple of years now. We don't feel like we're anywhere close to maxing out on these progressive programs. We actually have over 2 years worth of, if you did a workout every day for 2 years in these cohorts, you have a different but you're getting many different workouts that progress over time for that 2-year period. So there's always something to work on. And again, if you're over 40, if you're not working on it, you're probably losing it. You're going to be losing muscle mass. You're going to be losing your balance, your coordination. So it's you got to be vigilant. You got to work at it, and there's always something you could be doing. And I think the important thing to note is cardiovascular exercise, which a lot of golfers and the general public do a lot of, that will do a lot for your body. It will, for example, prevent diabetes. It will stave off various cancers, heart disease. But what it won't do is give you a strong, pain-free, injury-free body. A phrase, I didn't coin this, but I like it a lot, is cardiovascular exercise can give you a long life, but strength and resistance training will make that long life worth living, because you'll feel good, you'll be highly functional, you'll be active, you won't be injured, and you'll be pain-free, and you'll be good at golf.
Right, and that's ultimately what they're looking for, is they want to have a better quality life all the way around. Now, I mentioned earlier about going to the gym and things like that, and doing some of the traditional work. Is this the GolfForever regime? And I'm going to talk to you about the timing as well, but. Is this something that if somebody is already, belongs to a gym, say, well, hey, I've got a gym membership, I'm working out, is this something they can incorporate into, and I don't necessarily mean they have to take it to the gym, but as part of their weekly fitness routine, can they incorporate the GolfForever training program, if you will, into an existing program that they may have, a training program? Is that a good idea, or should they keep it separate?
100%. I'm glad you brought this up. The idea of GolfForever is that you're working with the same trainer that Scotty Scheffler does, and you are. I mean, you're having the same instructor in our program. You're also getting the same evaluation. You're also getting a progressive program. So if you're doing, for example, you like your routine, you're concerned about aesthetics. You want to make sure that you maintain your big biceps, or a woman may be concerned about her abdominal area, or whatever that is, and you want to keep doing that. 100%. We've designed the program such that, and I touched on this earlier, you log in every day, you click one button, you're presented with that routine for the day. Those routines are staggered so that if you do it every day, 6 days a week, or if you do it 2 days a week, say a Monday and a Friday, it's going to be safe and effective, because you're not going to be doubling up. So it's laid out that you're working on a different goal. So to answer your question, yes. If you love kind of your strength training routine that gives you the guns for the beach, you can keep doing that.
Right.
And this is a very different thing.
Well, the reason, and I know that. I wanted to ask you that because, especially here we are coming into the summer, January rolled around, everybody's got their New Year's resolution. Hey, I'm going to join a gym and get out and work out. And they're thinking, okay, I'm paying for this membership. Does that mean I've got to stop my membership and jump into this? But this is specific. This is specific training that's obviously more geared for the golfer in mind. It's not saying that others that don't play golf can't benefit from this particular training, but this is obviously wrapped around those that want to increase their golf life and obviously their overall life as well. So that's why I wanted to ask you that, if that's something that they could do in conjunction with a regular fitness routine, whether it might be walking on trails or biking or whatever the case is. So this is something that can work sort of part and parcel and not really be necessarily in conflict. The other thing is, obviously, this is a question is, okay, well, how much time do I, in order for it to be effective, do I need to commit to the GolfForever routines? What's sort of the norm typically, and what's to get the best benefit? What I need to commit to this? Because this is a question I guarantee people will ask.
Absolutely, and the key word in your question there was effective. So the bare minimum, if you want to see improvements in your game, improvements in your body that are noticeable, you need to do it 2 times a week. And 2 times a week means each day's workout is divided into 2 parts, a warm-up and a strength portion. And each of those are anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes each. So we're talking anywhere from 35 to 45 minutes twice a week. That's the bare minimum to see significant, noticeable improvement. If you really want to get the maximum benefit out of it, we're talking 3 to 4 times a week at those same time frames per workout.
Yeah, and it's like I said earlier, the same thing with instruction. If you want to see benefits, then you've got to put some effort into it. And, you can't just buy it and look at it and hopefully through osmosis that, you're going to get the benefits from it. You have to actually, listen, as well as I can guarantee you had many clients come into your clinic that, bought the latest fitness craze and it's been collecting dust in their garage or, down in the basement if they had one. So, we know how this works. And people always say, well, I wish I could be, more like the pros. What do they do? Well, this is what they're doing. They've been doing this for obviously you've developed a program that has become a little bit more advanced, but in the days of players like Nicklaus and Palmer, they weren't doing this stuff. I mean, they were great golfers now, but for different reasons. But the younger generation that's coming up now particularly recognizes, and we can thank, players like Tiger as an example, because he came out and he did a lot of these different strength training and so forth. And I mean, he was, let's be honest, he was kicking butt for many years out on the PGA Tour. And if it hadn't been for, some more serious injuries that were really beyond his control, he'd probably still be doing it. So, people are recognizing that, and even older golfers now are looking for ways to increase speed. And, instead of, and I'm saying this, speaking to the audience now, not to you, Jeremy, and that is, rather than spending that $400 on a driver to gain those extra, 15 or 20 yards, why not invest a little bit of money, which I guarantee is not anywhere near as much, and get yourself not only the equipment, but hop on board the GolfForever train, if you will, and work through the program, and you're going to gain that distance. I guarantee it. I'm very familiar with your program. I trust me, I did my research before you came on tonight, and I know that a lot of players out there think that they can buy their game, with equipment, and that's just not the case. So before we give everybody, because we get ready to sort of wrap things up here, what is going to be the future goals that you have in mind for GolfForever? What's down the road coming up that you can share with us? And maybe there might be a few things you can't share quite yet, but that's okay. What can you share with us that you're working on that we're going to see coming down the road?
Thank you, and I think that was well said, really well said. And you obviously get it. And to the point of spending $400 on a driver or committing to this, which is less expensive, yes, you are going to get that distance. In addition to that, just if it's not GolfForever, if it's just taking care of your own health, I don't care if you're 20 or 70, committing to regular exercise is going to improve your golf game. It's also going to improve your life dramatically, your state of mind, your mood, your health. You're going to live longer. You're going to feel better. So I'm on my soapbox here a little bit, but I firmly believe that, and I've seen it, and so it's just so important. Even if you're in your 70s, you can live and move and feel like you're in your 40s or 50s. You really can. It sounds outrageous, but I've seen it over and over and over. So I just wanted to say that it's so important.
No, you're well said, and you're happy. I'm happy to let you jump on the soapbox. I want to bring something out before we have to wrap up, because I know this is important. You guys are having a special Father's Day promotion. Do you want to share that with the audience as well? Since we're leading up to we're in the month of Father's Day, so go ahead and if you want, there's a special Father's Day promotion. The floor is yours.
That's right. And to address your last question, what's coming up is we're bringing on a lot of the top 50 Golf Digest trainers onto our platform. We're expanding our amount of content. We're going to be using this data we've collected to get so much more granular on how we assess people, how we provide them content. And it's really going to be remarkable. I mean, this is going to be so much closer than I ever dreamed of when we started this, to having a GolfForever trainer, right at your side at the gym. So there's a lot of really exciting stuff coming up, as well as us developing new products to go along with the swing trainer to integrate into your home training system. The Father's Day promotion, we're doing free shipping, and when you enter, you get in a contest to win a signed Masters flag from Scotty Scheffler, and that's going through June 21st. You can purchase it on our website, which is GolfForever.com, and you use code Dad's Day. That's all caps, all one word, DADSDAY, all caps, and that'll get you the free shipping on the swing trainer, which is getting you access. You'll have instructions after you purchase it to download the app to get all set up. And then you'll be entered to win that signed Masters 2022 flag from Scotty.
Very cool. Yeah, great little extra perk there and some extra incentive to do that. So just quickly to wrap up, now through June 21st, Father's Day, shoppers can use promo code DADSDAY, that's capitals again, DADSDAY, get free shipping on the purchase of GolfForever Swing Trainer, which of course includes the 30 days of the GolfForever app for free, plus get entered into an exclusive drawing to receive, one winner will receive a free signed Masters flag from Scotty Scheffler himself, one of the GolfForever ambassadors. So go to GolfForever.com to get more information, not only on that, but also on the GolfForever swing trainer and obviously the programs involved. Great product, and I'm going to say one last thing before we close off, and that is I think you've got a great business model, a great product. You've got some good people surrounded by that, and I might even have a few ideas that might help further things along as well. So maybe when you get a chance, you can reach out to Kevin and Carl, I know you know who I'm referring to, and get them to exchange our communication. I won't do it over the line here, but contact information. There's some things I'd really love to talk to you about. I think you might be interested in. So, Jeremy, thank you very much for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. It's been very interesting. I know it's been informative for the audience. And again, if you go to GolfForever.com, all the information there, how it works, the reviews, the people involved, the trainer itself, some great videos there. You can check it out. Literally thousands of videos in the library. There's definitely a golf fitness plan for you, and it's an at-home golf training system, so you don't even have to drive anywhere. You can do it right from the comfy part of your home, and lots of great things to come about. So go to GolfForever.com. Again, Jamie, thank you very much for joining me tonight on Golf Talk Live. You're always welcome to come back. Anytime you've got some updates or things that you want to share, just by all means, feel free to reach out, and we'll get you back on.
Hey, Ted, I really enjoyed this. I would love to talk to you next week. I think these questions were thoughtful, intuitive, and I love talking to you. So thanks so much. Really enjoyed it. Not a problem.
Much continued success, and we'll be in touch real soon. And have a great weekend, and keep doing all the great stuff that you're doing. We love those that can help us hit a little further down the fairway. So thanks, Jeremy, and have a great weekend.
You as well, Ted. Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye. All right. That was my very special guest, Dr. Jeremy James, founder of GolfForever. Again, you can go to GolfForever.com, and there's a special Father's Day promotion going on right now. If you enter promo code Dad's Day, that's all in capital letters, through June 21st, you can get free shipping, which also includes free app for 30 days, entry into that, and then also entry into a drawing for the signed Masters flag from Scotty Scheffler, the 2022 Masters champion. So definitely well worth it, and it's a great program. I've actually got one and started using it here recently, so I can attest to it. So on that note, again, thanks everybody for tuning in. A special thanks again to the guys earlier, Pete Buchanan and James Kyle, for joining me on the Coach's Corner panel. And once again, a special thanks to Dr. Jeremy James from GolfForever. Thanks, guys, for coming on the program tonight. And thank you, the listeners, for tuning in each and every week. And I will see you next week right here on Golf Talk Live. God bless everybody.
Thanks for joining us. We hope you enjoyed this week's broadcast of Golf Talk Live. We'd like to thank this week's Coach's Corner panel, and a special thank you to tonight's guest. Remember to join Ted every Thursday from 6 to 8 p.m. Central on Golf Talk Live. And be sure to follow Ted on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you're interested in being a guest on Golf Talk Live, send Ted an email at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. This has been a production of the iGolf Sports Network.